research on the topic, but I am by no means an expert on this particular area. If there are any history buffs who happen to notice if I am in error anywhere in this video, or if they just want to provide a little added color, please comment below. I want to ensure that I am only disseminating accurate information on this channel. So again, any and all help is always valued. Thank you. Now, this topic is vast. It spans centuries of ancient Roman history. So by the end of the video, I hope you'll have a more thorough understanding of who the gladiators were, their various types, some of their most famous representatives, and some of the myths versus the realities of their quite brutal world. So, our story begins long before the grandeur of the Roman Colosseum. The origin of gladiatorial combat is somewhat shrouded in mystery, but most historians agree that it likely began with the Etruscans. They were an ancient civilization that predated the Romans. The Etruscans practiced a form of ritual combat associated with funeral rites, where warriors would fight to honor the deceased and ensure their passage to the afterlife. These rituals were meant to symbolize the journey of the soul and the struggle between life and death. As Rome grew from a small city-state to the sprawling empire it eventually became, it absorbed many practices from neighboring cultures, including the Etruscans. Gladiatorial games, initially tied to funeral customs, evolved into a form of public entertainment and a tool for political power. By the 3rd century BCE, gladiatorial games had become a prominent feature of Roman public life. The first recorded gladiatorial combat in Rome took place in 264 BCE at the funeral of a nobleman named Junius Brutus Pyrrha. His sons organized combat between 3 pairs of slaves. Obviously, this is a fairly modest beginning compared to the massive spectacle that would soon follow. As the Roman Republic transitioned into the Roman Empire, gladiatorial games grew in both scale and significance. Emperors and politicians used the games to gain favor with the public, distract them from political issues, and demonstrate their power and generosity. The construction of grand arenas like the Colosseum became a symbol of Roman engineering prowess and the central stage for these blood sports. The Colosseum, or the Flavian Amphitheater, inaugurated in 80 CE, could hold between 50,000 and 80,000 spectators. It became the epicenter of gladiatorial games, showcasing the might of the Roman Empire and the sophisticated organization of such spectacles. The games, however, weren't limited to just Rome. Every major city in the Roman Empire had its own amphitheater. Gladiatorial games were a common form of entertainment throughout the empire. Contrary to the romanticized portrayals in modern media, the life of a gladiator was harsh and often quite short. Most gladiators were slaves, prisoners of war, or criminals condemned to fight. However, there were some free men who actually volunteered because they were lured by the promise of fame and fortune. Training took place in schools called ludi, the most famous of which was the Ludus Magnus, which was located close to the Colosseum. These schools were run by a lanista who was responsible for training the gladiators and also managing their careers. Training weapons, armor, and fighting styles. These types were designed to create varied and entertaining sessions of combat, often pairing different styles against each other to test their skill and strategy. The Murmillo were recognizable by their large rectangular shield and a helmet that was adorned with a fish-shaped crest. They typically wielded a gladius, which was a short sword, and wore heavy armor, making them pretty slow but well protected. The Thryx, or Thracian, was armed with a curved sword and a small rectangular shield. They wore a helmet with a griffin crest and often had leg guards as well. The Retiarius was the net fighter who wielded a trident and a weighted net. They wore minimal armor, usually just a shoulder guard, and they relied on agility and speed. This type of gladiator was designed to mimic a fisherman, making their fights against heavily armored opponents particularly dramatic and symbolic. The Secutor was designed to fight the Retiarius. They wore a smooth helmet with small eye holes to protect against the trident. They carried a large shield and a short sword. The Secutor's helmet was streamlined as well to avoid getting caught in the net, showcasing a direct response and design to their frequent opponents. The Oplomachus, modeled after Greek hoplites, they carried a spear and a small round shield, often paired with a short sword for close combat. Their armor included a helmet, an arm guard, and greaves, making them pretty versatile and well-protected combatant. One of the oldest types was the Samnite. They were equipped with a large rectangular shield, a plumed helmet, and a short sword. Named after the Samnites, an ancient Italic tribe, they represented Rome's early military adversaries, turning history into a spectacle. As I'm sure you remember from the movie Gladiator, they would often reenact battles. The Demochairus fought with two swords, one in each hand, requiring exceptional skill and dexterity. This type emphasized agility and offensive capability, making their matches particularly fast-paced and extremely deadly. So, throughout the history of gladiatorial games, certain individuals stood out for their prowess, bravery, and stories that captured the imagination of the Roman populace. Spartacus was perhaps the most famous gladiator of all time. Spartacus was a Thracian who led a massive slave rebellion against the Roman Republic from 73 to 71 BCE. As you're probably familiar, his story has been immortalized in books, movies, and TV series, symbolizing resistance against oppression. The rebellion, though ultimately crushed, highlighted the brutal conditions faced by slaves and gladiators, leaving a lasting impact on Roman society. You probably remember Commodus from the movie Gladiator. The real Commodus was the Roman Empire from 180 to 192 CE, who fancied himself a gladiator and often fought in the arena. He thought himself a reincarnation of Hercules. His participation blurred the lines between the ruling class and the world of the gladiators, though his combats were more than likely staged to ensure his victory, as you can imagine. Commodus' fascination with gladiatorial combat reflected his desire to connect with the masses, albeit through a medium that underscored his eccentricity and detachment from the realities of governance. Crixus was a Gaul and one of Spartacus' chief lieutenants during the slave rebellion. Renowned for his bravery and strength, his story is intertwined with that of Spartacus, though he ultimately met his end in battle. palatial estates, showcasing how gladiators could ascend to significant heights of fame and fortune. Nero's patronage of Spiculus exemplifies the complex relationship between emperors and their favorite gladiators, who were often used as symbols of imperial power and munificence. Now, one of the most enduring myths about gladiatorial combat is the gesture of thumbs up or thumbs down to determine the fate of a defeated gladiator. This image has been popularized by Hollywood, particularly in movies like Gladiator, but the historical reality is more complex. The Latin phrase pollice verso, and sorry, I know very little Latin, so if I did butcher that pronunciation again, feel free to correct me. It's often translates as with a turned thumb, does not actually specify the direction of the thumb. Ancient texts suggest that gestures to signify life or death were not standardized and could actually vary. Some scholars believe that a thumb turned sideways or hidden within a fist indicated mercy, while an extended thumb signified death. The decision to spare or kill a defeated gladiator rested with the editor of the games, usually an emperor or another high-ranking official, who would consider the crowd's reaction, but they ultimately had the final say. Gladiators who fought bravely and entertained the crowd were more likely to be spared, as they were seen as valuable assets to the lanista. Life as a gladiator was obviously fraught with danger and full of short-lived glory. Most gladiators did not survive long enough to enjoy any sort of wealth or status they might earn. Despite this, the promise of potential freedom and fame drove many to embrace life in the arena. Gladiatorial games were not just about the combat, but also about the show. They included elaborate costumes, thrilling spectacles, and even staged, naval battles in flooded arenas. These games were meticulously planned and choreographed to ensure maximum entertainment value. The spectacle was a blend of violence, drama, and skill, captivating the Roman populace and reinforcing social and political hierarchies. The decline of gladiatorial games began in the later years of the Roman Empire. Several factors contributed to this, including the rise of Christianity, which opposed the brutality of the games, as well as the increasing cost of hosting such spectacles. The last recorded gladiatorial games took place in the early 5th century CE, though animal hunts and other forms of public entertainment continued on. The influence of Christianity can't be overstated. As the religion spread throughout the empire, its teachings of compassion and the sanctity of human life clashed with the violent nature of the games. Prominent Christian figures like St. Augustine spoke out against the spectacles, urging Roman converts to abandon such entertainment. Again, economic factors also played an important role. The massive expenditures required to stage games became increasingly burdensome as the empire began to face financial difficulties. The cost of training, housing, and feeding gladiators, coupled with the expenses of maintaining the arenas and procuring exotic animals for hunts, made the games less and less sustainable. So, as we wrap up, the history of gladiators is a complex tapestry of courage, tragedy, and above all else, spectacle. These warriors, whether slaves, prisoners, or volunteers, fought not only for survival, but for glory and recognition. understanding the myths and realities of gladiatorial combat, including the infamous thumbs up or thumbs down gesture, provides a clearer picture of the brutal yet admittedly fascinating